America's Mayor Live. America's Mayor Live, still suffering in Palm Beach. There I am, isolated from the cold, frosty, wintry, crime-ridden New York.
Terrible way to live, isn't it?
And I have with us one of the legendary baseball players, one of the great ones, one that I watched numerous times, and he made me cry because he used to beat the New York Yankees. Denny McLain.
Good to see you, Mayor. Mr. Mayor, how are you? Good to see you.
And you know, the thing about Denny, his records are unbelievable. He's in the Hall. I mean, so there were a lot of great pitches, but there's nobody quite like him for the season that he had, and several seasons that he had. And I just saw him last night at the Super Bowl party at the Trump place.
Right.
And I remember the last time I saw him, I went and looked up the number of innings that he pitched. And I said, oh, gosh, it was like 250. What was 330?
331, I think.
331. Yeah. I couldn't retain 331. It was like, it's like telling me I should remember $50 trillion or something. But how could someone throw 300? That's 3 seasons. Denny.
Well,
it's 3 seasons.
In today's game, right? It is, right. Yeah, more or less, yeah.
100.
100. But you know, that's the way the game was back then, as you know. You know, when Whitey Ford went out on the mound with the Yankees, who was one of my great heroes, him and Mantle,
of course, mine,
together. 16. Yeah, I mean, they were the epitome of what the game was all about. Mickey Mantle was the greatest icon the game has ever had, and that's what led us to them. Listen, at 11 years old, I was a multimillionaire. I had every rookie card of Mickey Mantle in my front wheel of my swing, and I had Al Kaline's rookie card in my back wheel. Wow. And then when I signed my contract at 18 years old out of Mount Carmel High School, they gave I was just had signed a letter to go to Notre Dame. I went to Mount Carmel High School in Chicago, and lo and behold, the Chicago White Sox came to me, and I'm a Chicago guy, of course, and offered us 17.5. And
so when you said you had Al Kaline's card, I thought you're from Detroit. You know?
Yeah, from Detroit, sure. Yeah.
But I mean,
well, no, that's where I played. That's where they signed.
Played.
I wound up there in a draft thing. All kinds of crazy rules back then too, and that's how I got to Detroit. But when we got to 17.5 from the White Sox, my mother immediately said, "Do not let them get out of the house."
$17,500
was a lot of money back then.
It was. What was the usual amount? Like about 8? Or 10,
2, 3, 4, sometimes 500 a month. You know, they offered my dad was a pretty good player. And when he come back from World War II, the Cubs offered him a contract for $350 a month. And he went and told my mother right away, who she wasn't my mother yet, but he told his wife, my mother, and said, listen, Betty, I've got a chance to go play with the Chicago Cubs. And I just want to do that. And Betty said, my mom said, you have two issues. Number one, you can go with the Cubs and play with your little kids, or you can come sleep with me and get married, and maybe we'll have some children. And I guess we know what he did. Isn't it amazing how the game became second class?
Yeah. And also, I remember listening to stories of the Dodgers and the Yankees in the 50s. Sure. When I did a big ceremony for them for the anniversary of the Dodgers winning the World Series. And a lot of them told me they had second jobs. They all had second jobs.
Everybody.
They all worked during the winter. And some of them even would sneak in a little work during the season.
We all did.
They needed the money.
I wound up with a music degree. I'm, a piano organ player. I was with the Hammond Company for 25 years. And that kept me alive after the game had finished. Oh yeah, 25 years. I had a deal with them. That was just the most wonderful thing in the world. We didn't starve. A lot of guys starved. A lot of guys had to go to the organization that we have in baseball. Oh yeah, baseball's assistance team used to give players money, and still do today. Guys who get in a lot of trouble financially and what have you, or for whatever disasters, car accidents, and BAT will write them a check to help them out of trouble.
And if you won the World Series, what would you get? Like last night. Ted, do you know how much they got for winning the Super Bowl last night? What the amount was?
I have no idea. Somebody gets a car though.
It's about
trip to
500.
Disney World,
Yeah,
right?
it's about 500,000, I think.
Per
And
player?
the losers get
Yeah.
about 2 or 3.
And the
about
losers
Yeah.
make money too.
Yeah.
How much did you get for
about
the
200 grand. The
Listen,
losers get 200 grand.
the
Listen,
68 World Series?
We made so much money in 1968 after the World Series, you wouldn't believe it. We made 10 grand.
Whoa! Each player got 10 grand.
10 grand each player.
Mayor, they still talk about the 1968 Detroit Tigers in Michigan, of course,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I mean, that is a legendary year.
it is.
30, the last pitcher to win 30 plus games.
Right.
That still stands.
Right.
I mean, we'll never see. It's very unlikely nowadays with
I
how
don't
it's
think we'll
done.
ever
Well,
see
how many
20
20 game winners are we going to
We'll see 200.
Listen,
31 and 6.
It's tough.
I
It's
don't
tough to win ball games when you only pitch 5 innings. That's
Right.
one of the greatest problems. You know, they throw 100 pitches, 90 pitches, 95. All of a sudden, they're pitching up rather than down.
Yep.
All of a sudden, the
Even a
manager
lot
said,
of-
"Yeah, that's
Even
right."
a lot of good pitchers get hurt this way. The ones that go 6 and 7 innings.
You know why? Because they don't throw enough.
And like a one, they're winning or losing by 1 run.
Yep.
It's a game that you could have won.
That's
How many
exactly
games
right.
were you winning or losing by 1 run in the 6th inning, and then you went on and won that game?
And I won a lot of games after the 7th inning. A lot of wins after the 7th inning. And we didn't have what you would call the monster like the Yankees had with their great big wonderful relief pitcher. What was his
Ron
name?
Duran?
No,
in 68?
no,
in the
no,
60s?
no, no, no. The
Mariano Rivera?
Mario
Oh,
Rivera.
That's
right,
the
right.
mayor's favorite player. One of
Yeah.
your top
Oh.
3.
He's one of my top 3 favorites.
Yeah, I mean, what a great player he
Just
was.
as great it is. I think of him as being the best player at his position in baseball.
Probably
At his
maybe.
position. Like there's nobody else.
Yeah,
When you think of the greatest hitter, Babe Ruth, but then you got a bunch right behind Babe Ruth.
sure you do.
You can't even think of the best pitcher. It's impossible. I mean, you got 20,
You can't.
30.
It's
you-
impossible
You
because
fight all night about the best pitcher.
I mean, listen, you go back to Cy Young. You go back to
I mean,
some of those guys. I mean, none of us saw them pitch.
And for different things. Pitchers are
Right.
great pitchers. But in the case of Mariana, nobody quite ever closed like him. Like it's him and then way here.
He had that goofy little slider. And I'm telling you, it was a goofy little slider.
And he didn't look
But
like
he
a
threw
fastball
it at
pitcher.
95, 97 miles an hour, and the ball sunk just a hair.
Yeah.
And when a ball does this, it's impossible to hit, especially if you've got the velocity. And he had velocity, but you know what else he had? Great control.
Yeah.
Because without that, you're chump change.
Yeah, he had seasons where he walked 12, 18 people, something
Oh, yeah.
like that. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. No walks,
We
no
had a
home runs.
we had a pitcher on our team that used to walk 12 every time he went out there. This guy's name was Joe Sparma. And I'm telling you, he couldn't hit this building from 60 feet, 6 inches. And every once in a while, he'd strike out 3 or 4 guys in a row. And then you think, my God, this is the reincarnation of Sandy Koufax, or somebody like that. And then lo and behold, he threw a no-hitter for 8 2/3 innings. And the only year that Seattle was in the American League in the late 60s. And there was a little bandbox ballpark. The fences were like 280 feet down each line. It was terrible. Sparma went out there on a Saturday afternoon, 8 2/3 innings. He had a no-hitter going, and it struck out about 12 or 14 guys. Now he's got 1 guy left to get out, and he walked the next 3. Don Mincher come up, hits a grand slam home run. Guess what? We win 8-7.
Can you talk about some of your experiences, Denny, playing the New York Yankees? Of course, at this time, the mayor was going to plenty of games. I'm sure you may have even been at a game he was pitching.
John Ryder was, yeah.
Talk about the Yankees during that time. I'd say like the late 60s. Were they as dominant? I know they've had the and Mayor. You
they
can speak to
were,
this.
during your period, the Yankees' dominance ended in '64,
Yeah, more or less.
and then didn't pick up again until about 75,
Middle of the
76,
70s, yeah.
when Munson and
Jackson.
Jackson and
But I had
Guidry.
I had 2 or 3 thrills in the game. One was the World Series and the division championship in the
Right.
American League, because in '67 we had the fires, we had the riots, we had
Detroit.
everything you can think of
I
in Detroit. It
remember
was
those
terrible.
games. You could see them.
40 people got killed.
I can remember that.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I can remember you'd watch the game, and then the television was a little nervous about showing it or not, but they would show it. They would show you. I remember also in Washington, they would show you the town burning.
The smoke.
And,
Yeah.
here you're watching a baseball game, and Detroit's on fire. Washington D.C. is on fire. The
Well,
Bronx was on fire.
What they did with us is we had, this is a funny story. Jim Campbell, who was the president general manager of the ball club, we were playing a doubleheader, and I think it was against the Minnesota Twins. And lo and behold, Jim Campbell has got 52,000 people in that ballpark in 1967. 52,000, and that's a hell of a crowd in Niner Stadium. This is the old stadium. And the chief of police and the military come up to see Jim Campbell in his office and said, listen, we want you to get everybody out of here. There's a terrible fire out there. We don't know how far this riot's going to go, but there's people who are getting shot out there, and we want everybody out of the ballpark. Campbell said, let me tell you something, asshole. He said, I got 52,000 people in this park. And the only bad guy in this park is going to be you two guys. So you need to get the hell out of here. He wouldn't leave, wouldn't make one announcement until after the game. Doubleheader we had to go through. And none of us knew about it. None of us knew that was the riot going on.
Outside?
He had nothing piped into the ballpark. The radios in the clubhouse didn't work. Nothing worked.
You know, you could see it when the television cameras went over they shoot outside the stadium.
Yep.
I remember there was at the Washington Stadium. At that time, you could see a little bit of the city from the stadium.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was terrible to think Washington, D.C. is burning.
You want to hear the greatest part? They gave the National Guard, they brought the National Guard in, and they brought them in pretty quick. And they gave them rifles. You know what they didn't give them? Bullets. Mickey Lolich, the left-hander.
Yeah.
He was in the National Guard, and they put him on a corner at Gratiot in someplace, which back then was a horrible neighborhood. And they gave him a rifle, and he looked in his gun and said, wait a minute, if somebody's got to give me a bullet or something to put in the gun to shoot somebody if I get attacked. He said, there'll be no bullets for anybody left-handed.
That is.
Well, for New York fans, they should know that Mickey Lolich finished his career with the Mets.
Yeah, that's right.
They traded him to the Mets.
Yeah.
And he was never as good.
No, but he was done at that point in time. But my guy was Mantle. Like I said,
What do you mean by that? That's your guy.
Let him tell you the story. This is one of the great. This is one of the great baseball.
This stories. Is one of the
five great baseball.
One of the three highlights in my life in my major league career. Mantle came up in 1968 for the last time in Tiger Stadium. He needed one home run to go by Jimmy Fox, and I had a 6-1 lead in the ninth inning, 2 outs, nobody on. And I called to my catcher. Jim Price was the catcher. Freehand was taking a day off that day, and I'd already won 30. So Price comes out and says, "What's the matter?" He says, "Come on now. We've only been out here less than 2 hours. Let's play." He said, "Let's get this over with." He said, "A lot of us got to go to dinner tonight." I says, "Hey, well, hang on a minute. The dinner can wait at least 20 minutes." He says, "What do you want to do?" I says, "I want you to tell Mickey there's a ball coming that he's going to hit 9 miles." And he says, "No, I'm not going to cheat." I said, "Cheat? He can't hit a 6-run homer, for God's sakes. What are you talking about?" He says, "No, I'm not telling him." I said, "You got to be kidding." We had the first black umpire behind home plate, Emmett Ashford, who was the greatest entertainer of an umpire anybody's ever seen. And whenever he called a strike, it'd be strike, one of those great big long things. So I said, "Just go back." I said, "I'll take care of this myself." So he goes behind home plate, puts his glove up. I throw the first pitch right down the middle on an arc. And Mickey took it. Strike one. I can hear Emmett from here to Guam saying, "Strike!" and Emmett's just scared the hell out of everybody when he starts yelling. So I get the ball back, and I yell to Price again. I said, "Get your ass out here now. Come here." And he comes running out because Mantle looks like he's confused. Looks like he's going to jail, for Christ's sake. So Price comes out and he says, "What now?" I said, "We're doing the same thing." He says, "We're not doing anything." He says, "You're doing it all." I said, "Just tell Mickey to be ready then. Just say, be ready." He said, "All right, I'll try that." So we go. Now, this is the Rhodes Scholar, right? Yeah. ROADS. And so he goes behind home plate, and I hear something, but I don't know what it is. So I'm thinking, he's ready now. I throw another fastball about 60 miles an hour on an arc. Strike 2. Now I'm thinking, I'm not working with a Rhodes Scholar at any degree of level this game, but Mickey's not even one. So now I yell down again. I said, "Where the hell do you want to pitch? Where do you want it, Mick? Mick, just tell me where." That's right. He said, "I want it right here on the inside part of the plate near his belt." And I said, "Okay, I'm ready." So I throw him another one, 60 miles an hour on a pitch, and he hits it 500 miles foul. Foul. And then I said, I'm thinking now, strike the son of a bitch out.
Yeah, right. You gave him his chance.
I
gave him his chance.
The game is one strike from being over, right?
Right.
So I yell, I said, Mick, it's coming again. It's coming again. Just wait on it this time, because he got so far ahead of it. By the way, we've got the picture of the ball coming off the bat.
Right.
It's a great picture. And so I throw the next one, and he hits it, 9 miles. He hit it out over the light towers in right field at the Tiger Stadium. And he rounds the bases, first base, second base, third base. Everybody in the park is standing up, standing ovations, duly noted. And everybody was just screaming for him. And our guys were hugging him, kissing him, whatever else they wanted to do to him. And but they were having a great time. And so we go through all the exercises of saying, you're great. You're the greatest we've ever seen. And the next hitter is Joe Pepitone. Joe Pepitone gets in a box and says, hey, throw me one of them too, He says, I'm your friend. I'm going to be here next year. I'll help you. You help me. He says, I've got a bar. I got a restaurant. So I said, yeah, Joe, be ready. And Joe heard everything I said, and I threw him a fastball right behind the ears, almost killed him. They called me every name in the book. Every name you can think of.
He was a funny guy, Joe.
Oh, he's still funny.
I did his 25th wedding.
His
wow.
Wow.
His weddings.
His wig fell off that day. We didn't know he had a wig.
Oh,
and the wig wound up on the chest protector of Emmett Ashford. In the breeze, blowing in the breeze. It was unbelievable.
He was a Yankee who began his career, one of the few, first swing of the bat, home run.
Is that right?
First swing of the bat, Yankee Stadium. Mostly guys have a hard time. Even Mickey Mantle when he first started.
Yeah.
Mays when he first started at Polo Grounds. Mays was so bad they almost wanted to send him down to the minors.
Yeah, that's right.
Before he started hitting.
That's right.
And then they catch on. And I remember the first game that Giambi was at Yankee Stadium, they booed him.
Yeah, that's
he went
right.
0 for 4.
Yeah.
He went 0 for 4. The Yankees expect you if you get a home run every game. And Pepitone comes in, and the first thing he does is hit a home run. It had the Yankee fans totally shocked. And he was a great athlete because he wasn't a bad center. He used to play first base.
First base.
They put him out in center field.
He made one of the greatest.
When did they ever turn a first baseman?
Listen, he made one of the greatest plays I've ever seen in my life. There were men on first and second against our club, and our guy was bunting. I don't know who our bunter was, but Norm Cash. Norm Cash was supposed to bunt. A great player. He was supposed to bunt. Right. But you don't ever ask him to bunt.
I can't imagine. I can't even imagine Norm Cash.
But imagine him getting the bunt sign, and he's going to lay down the bunt, right? So he fouls the first one off, and then he looks down. He gets the bunt sign again, and this time he ignores it. And Pepitone, because Norman had faked the bunt the first pitch, Pepitone come running down that 90-foot line, and about 25 feet from home plate, Norman hits a line drive, knocks him on his ass. He caught the ball. He caught the ball. It was the greatest catch I've ever seen, because if he doesn't catch it, he's dead.
Norm Cash was a Yankee, was feared by Yankees because he was a left-handed hitter. Yankees always had trouble because of the short porch, and teams that had good left-handed power hitters could do damage.
And Norman loved that ballpark.
A lot of times I can remember him in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, even up in a game or winning a game.
Well, Norman always wanted to hit second or third when we come into New York every time, because he got up one more time that way.
Yeah, people don't realize that the ballpark was built for Babe Ruth.
Right.
And it was built so Babe Ruth would get as many home runs as possible. And there's a reason why for 2,000 years, the most home runs in baseball, 60, were hit by left-handed pull hitters in Yankee Stadium.
That's
Maris
right.
and him.
That's
exactly right. And Maris was even more of a pull hitter than Mantle, which is one of the reasons I think he pulled that. That was what Maris could do beautifully. He was a great pull hitter.
And that's the reason why the Yankees were always looking for good left-handed pitchers.
Yeah, it made sense.
It just made a lot more sense.
Line yourself up with good left-handed hitters who can get ahead of the ball. Yogi Berra.
Oh, yeah.
He used to hit it around the pole. Right around the pole.
Yeah, Yogi, I think Yogi hit a home run off me the first time I faced him. And the first game I ever pitched against the Yankees was against Whitey Ford, which was a thrill for me. Another one of my heroes, right? And, I'm out on the mound that day, 19, 20 years old, and I'm thinking, I don't even care if I lose. I'm pitching against Whitey Ford. And I said something loud on the bench like that, and Charlie Dressen was our manager. Remember Charlie Dressen?
The old Giant
The
manager.
old Giant manager.
Wow.
Dodger manager.
Dodgers,
And he's the one that was managing when Ralph Branca gave up the home run.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And he said he called the home run before Branca let the ball out of his hand.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what he says. I believe him. He brought me to the big. I believed anything he said.
He was a good manager, right?
Oh yeah. Oh man, was he ever? He brought up Sandy. He brought up Drysdale. He brought up had a lot to do with Marichal. Had a lot to do with big league pitchers. And there's only one pitching coach that has had more 20-game winners than he did, but Charlie Dressen, and that was Johnny Sane, who I played for. He had 4 years in Detroit.
Wow.
And Johnny Sane was a miracle guy. No matter what club he went to, one or two guys would win 20 every time, starting with the Twins, the White Sox, Detroit certainly. The only guy that wouldn't listen to him in a serious way for some reason that none of us could figure it out was Lolich. And Lolich had as good a stuff as anybody I've ever seen in my life. It could throw the ball as hard as anybody I've ever seen. Just wouldn't listen to Johnny. And then after Johnny left, Mickey became a better pitcher. But while Johnny was there, he just never learned anything. And Johnny was the kind of guy, he would work with you until you just almost pooped on him to wipe him.
Then he'd give up.
Right. Then he finally gave up. And it took Johnny 3 years to decide, I'm not going to do it anymore. It's just a shame. Just a shame.
Well, thanks for joining us. America's Mayor Live with a very special guest this evening, superstar pitcher Denny McLain. And of course, most of us remember him as a Detroit Tiger. We have a big audience in Michigan.
The thing that every record is made to be broken, right? I just don't think, Mickey, they'll ever break
it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Wins.
31 wins in 1968.
I can't imagine it. Largely, first of all, it would have been hard anyway. Nobody had done it before.
Very difficult, right? Very
when
difficult.
They played under your conditions. Well,
first of all, you had to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is you have to play with a good club, but the most important thing is you got to get a run or two early.
Yeah.
Because it's the whole game is different when you're ahead 1 run or 2 runs.
Right.
And if you don't have that little cushion in the beginning of the ball game, because we're all a little goofy in the first 2 or 3 innings.
That's true.
But it's tough to get your rhythm all the time. Well, you know what I mean.
Never professional.
So you caught a lot of goofy guys.
Oh yeah, I love pitchers. They're all crazy.
They are. They absolutely are.
And
and my diet, I've been very lucky. I'm now going to be 79 years old next month. And my diet is still the same as I started out after my dad had died. My dad died when I was 12 years old, 13 years old. Twinkies and Diet Pepsi, it works.
For breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast,
lunch, and dinner, bud. But guess what?
You got it.
Hey, I'm here, right? Yeah. I'm here.
Bet you never thought you'd get diet advice.
So comment below. We got a lot of people tuning in tonight. A lot of great comments, questions. Let us know where you're tuning in from, of course, and questions you may have for Denny McLain. One question that we have, both of you have won big in your professions. What does it take to win in life? And that's a big open-ended question, but any advice, right? You're growing up. At some point, you realize I got something special here, right? And certain things are happening, and you realize I'm at the top of my profession. How do you handle that, and what does it take to get there?
I think, first of all, when you have success, number one, when we had our first child, life got different. Life became really, really serious. And then we had number 2, number 3, and number 4. And that was the most fun I've ever had in my life, is having 4 children, by the way. But I got to tell you that the dedication, the exercise, during my winter times, when I wasn't traveling for Hammond or somebody, or Pepsi, Pepsi was the other company I sponsored. When I wasn't doing that, I was bowling 100 lines a day at a bowling alley every day. 100 lines a day I used to bowl 6 days a week, all winter long. And it kept me in great shape. It made my arms stronger because I had a bad rotator. Oh, yeah. Listen, it made my arms stronger. It built some great muscle in the upper chest. and my legs were just, I've never had better legs in my life than I did when I played.
What an interesting thing to do it. I found that for me, it's concentration.
Yep.
You got to set a goal, and you've got to work hard and concentrate and put all of your energy into it. So sometimes if I'm involved in something very big, I'm very bad. Like when I was trying a case, I couldn't think of anything else.
So thanks for
if I were trying a case, I would go to bed at night. I'd bring the files to bed with me. I wake up in the morning. First thing I do is work on the file. And somebody wanted to talk to me about something. All I thought about was that case for that period of time, because there was just a certain period of time in which you could accomplish it and you didn't want to waste it. And I always thought that concentration was the key to success.
See, you had hundreds of pages of stuff you had to read every night. I only had to worry about a fastball, curveball, slider, and changeup.
No, you had to worry about all those pitches. Right. I know what that was like. You got to worry about all those pitchers, and there's always one or two guys in the lineup to bother you more than others.
Sure.
And then sometimes it's the guy you're not thinking about that hits the home run against you.
Boog Powell.
The number 9 guy. The number 9 guy hits the home run.
Boog Powell.
He was a great player, though.
I hate him. Boog Powell used to kill me, and used to yell out in the on-deck circle, "I'm coming up next. I'm coming up
Get
next."
out of here.
Oh, I'm not kidding.
You know, Willie Mays, who was my client at one time and is a good friend, but Willie Mays told me that, he was friendly with everybody. He was something like Yogi Berra of the National League.
Very much so.
Yogi would talk to everybody, and everybody loved Yogi, and everybody loved Willie. Nobody would say a bad thing about him. He says there's only he was talking to me once. We were going to court. We had a long ride, and there had been a big fight in baseball the night before. Let's say it was the Cleveland Indians and the Minnesota Twins. They had a big fight, and it had been on all over television. And Willie was really upset. He said, "I never fought over that. I got hit one time." He said, "I had the record being the most hit guy in baseball."
I'll bet.
And he said, "I just took it. I knew I hit a home run. They were going to hit me."
Game.
He said, "But they never tried to hurt me. They never hit me in the head. Only one guy, and I hate him to this day, and I don't talk to him even when we see each other at old timers." Who was that? Bob Gibson.
Oh, yeah.
He said, Bob Gibson, I always believed that Bob Gibson wanted to hurt me.
I think Bob Gibson wanted to hurt everybody.
I always thought he wanted to hit me in the head.
Even before a week before he died, he wanted to hurt somebody.
He said everybody on my team believed it too. They believed that he would throw at your head, end your career, didn't care. He said sometimes when we would get into fights, guys would go up and say, "Don't you know we have kids to support?" He would just look at you like, "I don't care." He said, to this day, I'm scared of him.
Because he pitched the greatest ball game I've ever seen in a World Series. One game, He struck out 17 of us.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a little magic in there. We did not know. They used to close center field in St. Louis all the time. That day, opening day of the World Series in '68, they allowed all the people with white shirts to sit in center field. And Gibson threw from 3/4. I threw from overhand.
It used to be illegal. Theoretically, right?
Theoretically, it was illegal. Yeah. We complained about it. Oh, yeah, we complained about it. And the umpire said, "It's too late now. Too late now.
Too late now."
Big black thing up.
And see,
that's right. There's probably rules now. And they don't have seats back there now, right? It's usually like a hole.
But I was overhand, so I was above the white shirts. And he was 3/4. He was right in the middle of the damn white shirts. And he struck out 17 of us. And when Cash went up the first time, he struck out on 3 pitches. He says, "I never saw one.
Wow.
Never saw the pitch." He says, "The ball's coming out of something. I have no idea what to do." He struck out everybody that day. It was unbelievable. What stuff he had that day.
So I have to check with Ted. Any more balloons, Ted?
So we're monitoring now. Where are we at? 4. And Dr. Maria, have they confirmed that these most recent ones are in fact high altitude balloons from the Chinese Communist Party?
Was a balloon, and the others were cylindrical things about the size of a car, but now they're calling them all balloons, so we're not getting really good information.
It's very, very, I don't know how to describe it. It's very much a matter of concern when the administration, in a situation involving national security, constantly changes the story. And I don't care if it's a Republican administration or a Democratic administration. That's got to be straightened out. You can't, in a matter of national emergency, you can't do things like they did the other night. The other night, there was a strike during the day, And then all of a sudden they show, I think it was Friday night, Maria, they show a red dot right on the border of Montana and Canada. And they closed the Montana airspace. And they said that they didn't know why. Well, you don't close people's airspace and not tell them why.
Right.
I mean, thank God the American people don't panic. If we were different kinds of people in a different kind of country, we could have had massive riots with this nonsense. They closed the airspace in Montana. Nothing, not even we suspect. People are entitled to an explanation when their airspace is closed. What are they supposed to do? Go into a hole in the ground, or is it a bomb that's coming? What's the reason? Second, they call the congressman from Montana and they tell him that they observed an object. They won't call it a balloon. Remember, they were shooting down objects for a while, not balloons. The second one was an object.
The last three.
And the third one was an object.
The first one's a balloon, the last three.
This was first an object. And at the time that they're talking to the congressman who was at a function in Montana, Fox is, the spokesman for either the Defense Department or the White House is saying it was a mistake. It was a radar anomaly. It went from first we had balloons, then we had objects, then we had radar anomalies. All of a sudden, a day later, that same thing that was an anomaly gets shot down near Lake Huron. That's right. That's the one that ended up
Michigan, by the way.
Yeah, that's the one that ends up at Lake Huron. They were wrong about it, or they lied about it, or they got confused about it, or it got all the way through. They spotted in Montana, and then they don't see it again until Detroit.
Yeah, that's right.
So, meanwhile, with all of this, our president is at a party. Our president is at some useless party.
Well, you got to party sometime.
Can you imagine him at a party?
I asked President, we were at a gathering with, I'm not going to say former president, I'm going to say President.
President Trump.
I always learned that you always call the person president.
Sure.
For as long as they're alive. I call President Clinton president. When I see Bill Clinton, I say President Clinton. And so I call him President Trump. I don't know what this former president thing is. I call President Ford whenever I saw him. I didn't say former President Ford. How are you? So we were with President Trump last night watching the game. And I asked him, it was almost like a joke, but too serious to be. I said, would you have spoken to the American people if this had happened? He said, yeah, about 50 times.
Sure.
By now. Sure, I would have spoken to them. He said, well, what did you do on September 11th? I said, the first thing I did was try to get to a microphone. I was trapped in a building. And the first thing I did, I was at all kinds of junk on me and whatever. But I knew if the people of the city saw me, they would have more confidence. They would feel, well, somebody's in charge. Somebody is gathered. Somebody knows what's going on. Even just to say to people, we got charge of it.
And that's what you did.
Very serious. Maybe we don't know all the dimensions of it, but I can assure you the police department and the fire department are doing everything they can. That takes it down from here to here. It's still here. They're still nervous. The president has to get out and explain, however bad it is, whatever it is. I mean, just to say that the entire Air Force is on alert. The entire military is on alert. All the police departments are on alert. I've communicated with them. People want to hear that. And I don't understand what the reason is. I don't think any president has ever done this. Whenever there's been an emergency of some kind, we see the president on television and he assures the American people that he's in charge.
Everything's okay.
Well, thanks for joining us. So after the first initial balloon was shot down February 4th, there's been at least 3 more incidents. And of course, most recently in Lake Huron, of course, tonight, very Michigan-centric show. We have an audience, in-person audience, a lot of Michiganders here this evening. The most recent object was shot out of the sky over Lake Huron. As of now, the administration is not confirming what exactly these 3 objects were. And China, in response, is now accusing the United States of operating
Of
high
course.
altitude
We sent
balloons.
it up. I mean, is it really even necessary to quote what China is saying? I mean, they're going to lie. And we shouldn't even refer to it as China. We should refer to it as the Chinese Communist government,
That's right.
because it's an insult to the people of China to suggest that the 1.8 billion Chinese are like the 100 million that are the Chinese communist gangsters.
Of course, now in Britain, this is becoming an issue. And their Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, said Monday that the government would do whatever it takes to protect the country as the UK announced a full security review. And in Canada, their great Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is now saying there seems to be some sort of pattern. So nothing gets by that guy. And so they too are reviewing, can't help it. So they too are reviewing these strange incidences.
Teddy Ballgame. I gave him a new nickname, Teddy Ballgame.
And Mayor, that means something.
Teddy Ballgame. Teddy.
And that means something coming out from the great Denny McLain.
You know who Teddy Ballgame was, right? Ted Williams.
Oh, wow. Ted Williams.
So
He's giving me that nickname?
So I've given him a nickname, Teddy Ballgame.
Teddy Ballgame. That's quite something.
Because
that was Ted Williams' name.
Yesterday when we met each other for the first time, all he did was talk baseball for like 13 hours.
Good for him.
I learned from the best.
I can see that. I can see that. He does a good job.
Mayor, how did we start this program? How did we start this the whole live stream?
This program began simulcasting the New York Yankee playoffs.
Really?
Yeah. I was at home.
You were doing play-by-play?
I said I always wanted to do play-by-play. So what we did was we got on
Twitter.
YouTube. We got on Twitter, and I took the microphone out that was on the television, and I did an old radio broadcast.
Is that right?
And I used to work for President Reagan, and President Reagan used to love to tell us about when he used to broadcast for the Chicago Cubs.
For the Cubs.
And he used to do it from Iowa.
Yeah, explain how that works. This is great
for Davenport, Iowa.
Explain how radio and baseball used to work. So this is amazing. You probably know
his first job out of Eureka College was as a radio reporter for a station in Davenport, Iowa, which was in those days a fairly famous station with a fairly wide reach.
Right.
But one of the things they did was broadcast the Cub games, but they would broadcast them off the wire
from Chicago.
Yeah, they would get the wire from Chicago.
Right.
You could actually hear it in the background.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And then they would announce, so and so is at bat and strike one, and pitcher, and they do the whole thing. Pitcher goes into the windup, swings around his leg. In comes the pitch, strike one.
But all they have is the reading of each pitch. What happened?
That's all they had was the ticker tape.
Pitcher's rubbing up the ball. Pitcher standing on the mound, delaying a bit, rubbing up the ball. Rubbing up the ball, goes into the windup, swings around, ball one. He said every once in a while, it would go out. All of a sudden, tick, 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 stop. In the middle, a guy's at bat, counts 3 and 2. He's been fouling off pitchers. First trick was foul off.
Right.
Oh, he fouled one off to the left side. Oh, he fouled one off to the right side. He hit that so hard it went over the fence of the ballpark, out of play, of course, out of play. He says one time it went about 3 minutes. When he picks it up, the game is an inning later. He's got about 8 batters to go through. So he tries to fake it for a little bit. They get to a break, and during a break, he does 2 innings in about a minute.
That's incredible.
My father-in-law did color for the Cubs for 27 years. Lou Boudreau. Hall of Famer. Yeah, my father-in-law for 53 years.
Weren't there other Boudreaux that played baseball?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh,
no, he was.
Was he a catcher?
No, shortstop.
Shortstop.
Yeah,
right.
He was great. He was a great player.
Right.
He led the American League in hitting one year. I think he hit 350, 360. I mean, he hit lots of home runs from time to time. But he always had bad wheels, just terrible wheels. And that's what kept him out, maybe even being a bigger star than he was, because he was huge.
Was he on that Indian team that
48? He's the one that managed it. He's the one that had the 4 20-game winners.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was he the manager?
He was manager. 24 years old manager. What do you think of that? 24.
Player manager.
Player manager, shortstop every day.
They had player managers when you were playing?
Yeah, they
No,
did.
my father-in-law.
Oh, okay.
They had player managers. Every
They
once
may
in a
have had.
while
They
in
may
the
have had it
50s,
even with me once in a while.
maybe in the 50s.
Yeah.
It went up until the 50s.
I was still in grammar school in the 50s.
Okay, I'll give you one that I can think of was the last. Was Yogi Berra when he managed the Mets.
He managed and played.
And
Wow.
played for the Mets.
That's
Only for,
right.
only for
a few games. Though.
yeah, it was a few games. He tried it.
Because man, it's tough to do to play both places. It's just impossible.
I can't imagine that's easy. So thanks for joining us. A very special edition of America's Mayor Live with America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani, and very special guest, the last pitcher in Major League Baseball to win 30-plus games, the great Denny McLain. Many of us know him as a Detroit Tiger.
Thank you very much.
But, of course, he's played in a number of cities. And, Denny, we're getting a lot of questions from our viewers this evening, and they really want to know what, outside of winning, being a 30-game winner, that is, of course, what people remember you most by. But what's something else about you in your playing career that maybe people don't remember as much because that's just the overwhelming thing that they bring up?
Well, I think.
What are you most proud of, I guess?
As far as something personal, I hit a home run on my first bat in the major leagues.
That's amazing. So, that's amazing.
So that has to put you with only a few pitchers.
There's only a few of us,
Yeah,
right?
And a few pitchers.
And by the way, they after the ball game, and this was September of '63. After the ball game, they released that pitcher with the White Sox right away.
They got rid of the guy.
That's
Yeah.
That's not a
His
joke.
name. That's not a joke.
I know. I could see
His name was Fritz Ackley. Poor
guy.
Fritz. Dear God, I hope you're dead today, Fritz. Don't take it. Please don't take it personally. Please don't take it. Oh boy, was that a jerk? Oh my God. Fritz, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I don't mean you gone, but I mean I was really unhappy that they took you out of the game.
And they fired you. So a couple questions we want to get to for sure. One of them, the sport of baseball. What would be your advice to someone here in America, loves sports, football, some of these other sports, but they might see baseball as being slow, right? What can you say to those folks? What should they be looking for? How can you convince them to give it a chance as it is now? And then my next question will involve the future of baseball. But for this question, and maybe both of you can answer. I've asked this to the mayor before.
Yeah, learn more about your team. Learn more about the history of the clubs. Learn more about the players that are playing today. I mean, I know it's tough to follow these kids. My God, They play on 14 different teams by the time they're through. It's ridiculous.
Difficult.
Absolutely ridiculous.
There used to be about 8 and 8. 8 teams and 8 teams.
Yeah, that's right.
You could almost know the players, if not on every team, certainly in your league.
That's right.
If you were American or national.
That's exactly right.
Sometimes you'd know both.
That's exactly right. Because boy, I'll tell you, it's I can't keep track. Listen, except for one player on our team right now, I don't know anybody else on our roster.
The Tigers.
And that's Cabrera, the lunatic.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that and I go to games. I go to 15, 20 games a year. Sure.
A lot,
yeah. I mean,
do you follow baseball in general?
I follow baseball in general. Yeah. I really do. And I like to go to
on the American League or you try in general.
Just I follow the American League because, not only because I played there, because that's who we have in town.
Yeah.
Although I think we're not really in the American League anymore. I think we're somewhere around AAA right now with the team that we have.
The Tigers.
I mean, we've got a ball club.
Ask any Tigers fan; they'll tell you the last 10 years what's happened.
The ball club can't catch.
In my experience is
they can't.
Great
catch
disappointment when I go to Detroit.
Absolutely. They can't catch it. They can't hit a hit off man. They don't know what a bunt is. And what I don't understand, the biggest mystery in my life with this game today is you got guys with these shifts on. And by the way, Boudreaux's the one that invented the first shift with Ted Williams, He's the one that
he did the Ted Williams.
He did the Ted Williams.
Nobody else did it.
Nobody else did it until he did it. That's exactly right. So where the hell was I?
What these shifts today?
The shifts. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You got the shift. So you got the entire shift to the right side of the infield. Lo and behold, nobody over on the third base side, except maybe one guy in the middle of the field someplace. And nobody ever bunts. Nobody ever lays down the ground ball.
Exactly the same.
I mean, I say this with all candor. I think these guys are the most stupid baseball players in the history of the game. How the hell could you not want to hit the ball where nobody is?
What's the answer? What is their answer?
You hit it there. What they're going to do? Well, now they've changed the rules. Now they're saying you can't have a shift. which is really BS.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, this
Listen,
I-
we got a commissioner that's drinking the wine. You know, I mean,
What do you think of
I am
him?
so
Maria-
dis-
Manfred, Robert
I-
Manfred.
Maria and I have an interview with him about this very subject,
Do you?
and we do.
Well, you
The
tell-
shift?
You call me.
about 3 years ago. About
did
3
you?
years ago, and it was in England. We did it in England when the Yankees played the
Red Sox.
when the Yankees
Oh,
played
the
the
Red Sox,
in London, and we asked him about the shift, and he said the same thing you did and I would about the shift when it first came up. They were not worried about it because they felt the hitters would just kill it.
It's
right?
only been around 80 years.
Well, when it really became really big about 20 years ago, really big.
Yeah,
big,
but
big,
it-
big.
but it's
Where
been- but
they
it-
did it to half the players.
Well, listen, what they're doing today, because of all the different kinds of rhythms that they use now for their answers to where guys are going to hit the ball, they're looking at propensities where a guy's going to hit the ball.
Mhm.
We did it too.
Yeah.
We did it too. But you know what?
Not as
everybody.
dramatic.
But exactly right. Not everybody's a pull hitter.
Yeah.
Not everybody. Nobody. I mean, if you got one pull hitter on the team, you've got a lot.
But and also, I never understood why you don't hit to the opposite field. It's
Me either.
easier. It's easier to hit to the opposite field than to pull the ball
I'll gi-
because you can delay a little.
That's
I always found it easier when I had to hit the opposite field. I also found if I was in a slump. In fact, one of my coaches
Were you a good
used
hitter?
to cheat one time,
Were you?
and one of my coaches had as a way out of a slump hitting to the opposite field.
Well,
Because you could delay it.
that's a
Because
very
you
good
get that
idea.
extra second.
And that's
You can
true.
delay a little.
That's
You
true.
can watch the curveball break a little bit more.
That is absolutely true. And our guy Cabrera,
Miguel
probably-
Cabrera.
Miguel Cabrera, has probably hit at least 30 to 40% of his home runs to right field.
Yeah.
Right center.
Jeter and
Wow.
A-Rod were doing that at the end of their careers at Yankee Stadium. A-Rod was the first Yankee to hit 50 home runs as a right-handed.
That's
hitter.
right. Yeah.
Wow, that
First
would
one,
be
including DiMaggio.
that's something you wouldn't. Yeah, you would
Because
not
of-
think
because of
that.
the
You would
stadium.
never think that.
Right,
That's
or
for
But he
the
sure.
did,
Yeah.
he
Yankees.
did it opposite field. He did it hitting opposite
Wow.
field. Half those home runs was the opposite field. And and by the
Gosh,
way,
short-
Judge hits about a third
Ooh.
of his home runs to the opposite field.
What is
Except
that
there's a
kid
ball
eating?
player.
What is that kid
Judge.
eating? I got to get
Fence-
some.
Fences are irrelevant to him.
Jeez.
There's no-
Too bad the Tigers didn't make a play for Mr. Judge.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
got two judges here tonight.
we have two literal judges
See,
in
everywhere
tonight's
I
crowd.
really, everywhere I go, I have judges with me.
I knew he was one of those guys that every once in a while you see a guy, he's going to be a Yankee,
Yeah.
I knew he was going to stay like Jeter. You knew,
Did you really?
You knew Jeter was going to
Did
stay.
you?
Yeah. He got the,
He's from
he
Michigan.
got the bug.
Michigan kid.
He got the bug, the Yankee bug. We took a picture with him when he was a young player in Boston. And it's the funniest picture. I look like a midget. I'm standing there next to him, shaking hands with him at his knees.
Yeah.
Guys,
Thanks.
they say he's 6'7". I think he's about 6'10". I mean, he towers over all the other. Every pitcher now is like 6'5".
Oh, everyone's
Everybody-
6'5".
you can't be a pitcher
Everybody.
if you're not
Everybody.
6'5".
And they all think they throw it 100 miles an hour. I got news for you. They're drinking.
They can't possibly all throw it 100 miles. Everybody hits it. I mean, you can't.
100 miles an hour is nothing. Absolutely. It's never been anything, because if the ball doesn't move and if you can't throw strikes, you are Joe Sparma all over again.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm sorry, Joe, but
Poor
Joe's
Joe
been
Sparma.
gone. Joe's been gone 40 years.
Well, thanks for
It's
joining
okay.
us, America's Mayor Live.
I thought he'd come and look for us.
So the great Miguel Cabrera.
He's going to come after us.
So Aaron Judge, of course, the face of the New York Yankees, the longtime face for the Detroit Tigers, Miguel Cabrera. How much longer are the Tigers going to have him?
1 year. This is it.
This is it? You're calling it?
They only owe him $35 million. You ready for this?
Yes.
The guy's made $300 million with us.
Wow.
And the last 6 years he's been, listen, I could have gone out there and probably played. No, I take that back. I could not have played anything, but I could get somebody 55, 60 years old that could have at least made more appearances than he did. You know, the guy 5-6 years ago quit running to first base. Hasn't run to first base in 5 or 6 years.
Oh, no.
I think it's the most ugly thing I see every time I go to the ballpark.
Jim
won't
Leland
run.
would never accept that.
Yes, he did.
Jim Leland?
They all do. Listen, when a guy hits 50 home runs, everybody takes what he gives him.
Yeah.
And
a
That's
shame.
too bad. That's a shame. Talk about the management of the Detroit Tigers.
Well, I ran into one of the owners, Chris Illich, about a year and a half ago at the ballpark, because Illich hides in a cave somewhere in Detroit. We don't know where it is, but he's somewhere. And as we crossed each other's path, I said, Chris, how are you? He says, Mr. Know-It-All. I said, oh, really? And I said, well, how are you? He said, I'm fine. He said, how are you? I said, I'm fine too. And we talked for about 10, 15 minutes. And finally he says to me, he says, what would you do if you owned the club? I said, I would sell it today. Get rid of the damn club. Get some baseball people in here. And he turned around and walked away.
Oh, the mayor loves that. I promise you, the mayor loves that story. That's a great story. Of course, Chris Illich, the son of Mike Illich, longtime owner.
See, that's the difference. Mike was
Tigers.
a competitor. Mike put a competitive team on the field every year. He would spend the money.
Yep.
Chris Illich took the club, and this is, and I'm only trying to remember all of it, but our payroll when he first took over the club, I think was like $150-60 million, and he cut it back to $75 million. You can't put a major league team on the field for $70-80 million.
Not
if
nowadays.
You're going to compete, you got to compete.
Yeah, you've got to go. You got to go for the players when they're available, and you got to make yourself competitive with the other teams in your division.
And Mike Illich not only went to Detroit Tigers, but he owned the Detroit Red Wings, and they were the Yankees of the NHL.
Right.
When with my 20 years
and I
ago.
say this with all due reverence, what I'm about to say, and I know people in Detroit are going to really get hot. But we brought Steve Yzerman back to coach the hockey team. Steve Yzerman has always been a god in Detroit, right? Yep. One of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I've always said he was too nice to be a coach or a general manager or anything else like that. And I'm telling you, ever since Steve came back, we stink.
It's true. The Red Wings are the bottom of the barrel for it's embarrassing.
We can't beat Molly Putson
it's embarrassing, and we're a hockey state.
Oh,
and the Red Wings are they've been terrible now for 10 plus years.
That's right.
So that reminded me of that, obviously, with the Tigers being so bad for a while now.
Both organizations suck.
Denny, tell us what you really think about the management.
Well, one day I will. I'll write a book.
You haven't written a book.
Oh yeah, I wrote a couple.
I thought so.
Yeah, I wrote a couple. Nobody's perfect, and then the second one's I told you, damn it, nobody was perfect.
That's great.
I thought it was reluctant to express my opinion.
Yeah. So we're winding down just 7 minutes to go.
I have to bring up a story from last week that doesn't get covered because one of our functions is to go around the censorship that takes place in American news today and tell you the stories that the establishment doesn't want you to hear. We know all the problems with the FBI, but I'm going to tell you one that has me, I don't even know how to describe.
By the way, I've had problems with the FBI too.
But I can't describe to you how angry I am about this. I'm going to try not to be angry. But a week ago, a memo was discovered in the FBI offices. Now, this is an official FBI memo. I've read it. I've seen a million official FBI memos. It comes from the Richmond office. And it is a long description of a group that has to be focused on as suspected white supremacists, violent white supremacists. It's like a characteristic you should look for and be careful of if they display it. It's if they are a traditional radical Catholic. And you've defined a traditional radical Catholic. The FBI agent wrote this. If they seem to go to the Latin Mass. If they go to the Latin Mass, they are traditional radical Catholics, and they should be put on the white supremacist list, which now is just at one notch below the terrorist list, thanks to our crooked Attorney General. And the FBI disavowed it. But can you imagine? Let me just change this for a minute. Suppose the FBI agent had said, if you go to the if you go to the mosque and you spend a lot of time praying to Muhammad, you're going to be suspected of being a radical Muslim, and we're going to put you under surveillance. We'd have a revolution, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
The FBI agent would be fired. The head of the office would be fired. Anybody who touched that memo would be fired. And I'm getting really, really worried that if you want to talk about prejudice in this country, prejudice is against Christians, and particularly against Christians who express their religion, like evangelicals and Catholics. I am not excessively religious. I don't fit in the radical traditional Catholic category. I fit in I better go to confession more often Don't
we all should probably.
Right. But I don't,
especially after tonight.
I don't appreciate there being being made the subject of prejudice like this when I know that this FBI is not containable or controllable. These are the guys who dress up like they're stormtroopers and rage a house at 5 a.m. if you're Roger Stone. I mean, I never heard of that. I ran the FBI basically. I did more raids than they could probably count. I did very, very few of them in military gear with machine guns, except maybe for organized crime, but not for guys who are politicians or businessmen I mean, it's just outrageous what's going on in this Justice Department. It really is operating more like a secret police. Second, if we want to stay on religion, Bishop Roland Alvarez, who is a bishop in Nicaragua, was placed in prison for 26 years today by Denny Ortega, someone I think that Joe Biden looks upon very favorably, as he does most of the communists in South America. This is something that hopefully will wake up the Pope, and he will decide that this whole idea of communism and socialism is an opportunity to take advantage of the poor people that he wants to help. I can't believe that the Pope has confusion about this, because the one thing the Catholic Church was always clear about when I was young and growing up was the evil of communism. It was probably the greatest foe of communism on earth was the Catholic Church. And this Pope seems to have a little bit of a fondness for them that goes back to the ridiculous philosophies in Latin America that came out of the Catholic Church about communism. And now they're paying for it with Bishop Alvarez in jail for 26 years because Denny Ortega doesn't like what he's saying. This is what happens when this is what happens when you become communist. And I'm warning you of that because that's where we're headed. These things that are happening in this country are not isolated. They did not tear down the statues for nothing. It's precisely what Stalin did. It's precisely what Hitler did. They tore down the statues of all of the heroes that came from that culture. It's exactly what Mao did. It's what the Cultural Revolution was about. They didn't change the teaching of our history for the fun of it. It's exactly what Karl Marx tells you to do if you want to make a country communist. You get them to hate themselves. You get them to hate their history. It takes a lot to get people to hate America because it has a wonderful history with mistakes that are cured. But what do? The teachers union constantly is trying to teach critical race theory and trying to teach the theory that America basically began slavery. I mean, it existed for thousands of years before America, and it existed after America freed the slaves. So did we practice slavery? Yes. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it evil? Absolutely. Were we one of the countries who fixed it? You're darn right we did. Did an awful lot of white people die to free the slaves? You're darn right they did. And were there people always opposed to slavery in this country from the very beginning? Yes. That's not true of a lot of countries in the world, some of which still have slavery. So you think that happens and say to yourself, gee, how could that happen in America? The people are going around teaching that America is an evil country. It happens because of the influence of communism. That's how it happens. It happens because of the intellectual and philosophical influence of Marxism in our universities. A large percentage of our university professors, whether they know it or not, are confirmed Marxists. And we could go further and further into economic theory and why you deliberately create inflation, why you deliberately create economic problems in order to make people not only angry at their country, but angry at the economy of their country. And we've got only one hope. And that hope, we have only one hope. And that hope is that we can get him out of office by 24. And I also believe that this president should be removed under the 25th Amendment. He does not know what he's doing. We should not have a president that is missing half his brains. And this guy is missing half his brains. When you go to Cambodia, and the first thing you do is say you're in Colombia, and think that the president of Colombia is the prime minister of Cambodia, that's when you belong in a very seriously guarded place in a nursing home.
Rudy, I wrote a book called Nobody's Perfect. and keep one thing in mind. I'm never getting in a car with you again. I thought I said some radical things tonight. My God, I'm a pimple on a goat's ass, for God's sake.
Oh, I think you're okay. I think you're okay.
Thanks for joining us. Before we
wasn't it great having Denny here?
Great,
had a great time. Thank you. Thank you.
What is your closing message? And I want to hear from both of you to Detroit Tigers fans. Mayor, as someone who's rooted for a team that's had their own slumps. Denny, of course, spending so much time in Detroit. They're going to all see this interview back in Michigan. What is your message to the Detroit
all of
Tigers
my Christians
fan
and
base?
all of my Arabs and everybody else in the city of Detroit? Start praying, start saying rosaries all together, because that's the kind of lousy club we got this year.
Mayor, anything maybe a little more optimistic for your friends in Detroit?
Well, having grown up in Brooklyn when the Yankees would beat them every year and they'd always say, wait till next year. I have to say, wait till next year. We'll get you next year. They're going to make a revival at some point. I mean, every team does. The sad thing is I love the old teams, the old traditional teams. And I get confused when these new teams show up with these funny looking uniforms. So I want the Tigers back, like the Red Sox and
the old English D.
And like in the American League, it's the Yankees and the White Sox and the Red Sox and the Tigers. And what's that new team?
The Guardians.
That's named after a prophylactic.
The Cleveland Guardians.
The Guardians, right. Aren't they? You get 3 special Guardians.
You know what? It's better than saying condom.
You got to pick a name.
And listen, the guy in Cleveland, he had the guts to name it the condoms if he really wanted to. I thought he should have. I said, make it what it is. It's a joke. Yeah. It's a joke what this commissioner made everybody do.
We are the Guardians.
Yeah, we're the Guardians. What a condoms.
You get 3 for the price of 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Guardians are very secure.
Thanks for joining us, America's Mayor Live.
See you tomorrow night. Maybe between now and tomorrow night, the president may say something about the balloons. Who knows? Hey, Joe, wake up.